right, back again for another show of horror with Buller and Marchese. And we have a special guest on today. We have Leo Robertson.
Hiya.
And Gary, you there?
Hello. Hello.
So, yeah, I'm kind of, I was kind of shitting my pants just now because not only did Microsoft do another update and it screwed up OBS once again, thank God I had taken pictures of all the settings, so it's all back up and working, but that's just crazy that Microsoft can do that shit. I'm also a little disturbed, not disturbed, but unsettled. And Leo, it's because I got about 60% through Jesus of Scumberg.
Oh, fantastic.
And, wow.
I like the nervous little laugh there.
Yeah.
So I think, would you say that that's, if you're going to put it into a genre, would you say it's like bizarro horror?
Oh, I guess so. I don't know. It's been looked at by some bizarro people, and I think they said that it wasn't. I don't know that it is. It's my best stab at bizarro, but I'm quite an amateur in that regard. But for sure, I think that the reason I feel I can get away with it is because it's taking place in a world that isn't really like ours in any respect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I got. Like, the feeling I got was basically like, I don't know if everybody remembers the original RoboCop, but like those kind of punks where anything goes, or even like the punks from what's that movie? Toxic Avenger.
Yeah, exactly. Do you know? And I love that, and I love. Do you like John Waters films?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's that. It's just I've pushed everything to the absolute absurd, and I think it's very cartoonish. And there's
Yeah, so like that feel, but then I also got the feel of what's that one with Adam Sandler? Not necessarily the Adam Sandler one, where not really Little Nicky, but there was another one where they made like Demons and Angels. It was a lot of comedians. I think Jay and Silent Bob was in it, and Alanis Morissette was God.
Oh, Dogma.
Yeah.
Dogma, yeah.
So I had a little feel of that too, because or maybe like a Neil Gaiman type feel in there a little bit too, because I know that there's like an underlying story, like what these guys. It's almost as if you're reading the book from like through an LSD kind of trip. Not that ever happened to me.
Yeah. How do you think we record these podcasts? Gosh. Yeah, I got about possibly like 2/3 of the way through it. I think it's great, man. It's like if my social media persona wrote a novel or something. That's exactly how it is. I'm kind of intrigued to know where you came up with the idea of this, and what's the genesis for it?
So originally, this is so like okay, it's quite convoluted, but basically, I wanted to send a novel to Eraserhead Press.
Yeah,
and then they said, okay, but typically we get people to send in like bizarro novellas to introduce them to the publisher. So then they wanted a bizarro novella, and then I thought that G.G. Allen would be like the most bizarro human that I could write about. So then I started looking into him in his life and tried to write something inspired on that. And I typically, you know, when I do something that's so outside the realm of my own life, I do as much research as possible. But then I kind of figured that what people would come to was not how in-depth I'd gone into his life, but my own imagination.
Yeah.
That would be my my edge in that respect. So then I just went off of that. I think I plotted out various things that he'd written, and I tried to create a world that might look like it's inside his head or something. Because you look at essays he's written about when he's grown up, and you're like, I think a bit of that happened. I think a bit of that you completely made up or is part of your delusions or something like that. So then I just tried to do that, and yeah, just kind of. So I had a few kind of milestones I wanted to pick up on as the story progressed, but just kind of went off on one and just saw wherever wherever it might go.
I was going to kind of say, what was the process behind it? Did you plot for it? Did you, how long did it take you to put it together from start to finish? How many drafts of it did you do?
Yeah, good, all good questions. Well, I mean, research-wise, I watched. There's a specific documentary about him called Hated, which is great. I did. I read as much of his own writing that I could find, and I looked into. He talked to some people that he talked to in his life and who'd come in and out, and he went to jail at one point, and I just plotted all this stuff down, and so I think I spent like a good month just researching it, because I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this right, I know that people who know more about this guy than I do are really going to be looking to it for these specifics. And then that's why when I came up with this idea that it would just come up and it would happen in a world in which, doesn't reflect reality, I could just do whatever I want in it. And then I wrote the whole first draft in one weekend. And I think I was inspired by his own prolificacy, and just by how, his own creative process was quite rapid and first thought, best thought style. Then from there to the final draft, I don't even know that I changed that much. Just sentence structure stuff, things like that. I think it's rare that I get something of that length that quickly, though. I was quite lucky with this one.
Yeah, it's. I must admit, it's a wonderfully. As someone who doesn't really read Bizarro that often, I mean, the last one of Bizarro book I read was the Madeline Swan one, the something box. Fortune box, correct? Yeah, which I thought was absolutely brilliant, and I really, really enjoyed it. As someone who sort of appreciates short stories, I thought the way she'd sort of put them all together in this universe was great. But your universe is even more well defined. Like Will said, it's got its own feel. It's very gritty. It's dirty. It's skanky. The Jesus as a character is really interesting. I'm still at a stage where I'm kind of trying to work out what the animal imagery is about. You mentioned the cricket, and then there's the tarantula, and I'm still sort of trying to suss out what's going on there. But I'm having a good time doing it. So real props for that. For what I've read so far, it's good, and I want to finish it. So
I'm really glad you guys got to take a look at it. I've been dying to talk about it, because I wrote it a while ago and was lucky enough that Manuel of Hinder Souls Press picked it up. And then he came up with the genius idea of releasing it on Christmas, which is like the new birth of Jesus.
I know. I think his pre-orders are Halloween, right?
I think that's correct. That's the current plan. So when he came up with the idea of that, I was like, well, the exact right publisher has found this. I mean, it's so funny because, like, I know you guys as well. Like, we do try to see what the market wants and how can we please readers and stuff like that. But really, when I write stuff like this, which could, I don't know if it's trying to please a reader. It's not somebody I'd like to meet in person.
I think you're talking to him, Leo.
Exactly. Okay, then I'm definitely on the money there. It gets well received anyway. So I hope when I think a lot of our readers still are writers. I hope if they do read it, it inspires them to just write whatever the hell they want. Because there really are no rules, and whatever's inside you is the most important thing. And, and nobody's seen it before, so they don't know what a reader wants, really.
No, exactly. It's funny, I had a very similar conversation with Will this week about, I listened to a podcast. It was an interview with a fairly well-known short story writer, and she was saying how she'll listen to like tens of stories from a publication, and she'll go out and buy magazines of publications before she submits to them. And sometimes she'll have a story and she'll sort of tailor that to fit the magazine, and sometimes change parts of it. And I was saying to Will, I can see the logic in that, and that kind of makes sense. But to me, it feels like a bit of a, I don't know, but not being true to yourself. I like to write stories that I like writing, and then I submit them to magazines. in the hope that they sort of see what I'm trying to say and they feel it too. I'd rather submit something that's come out of my own head and is from the heart and is an honest and truthful piece of literature, rather than trying to ape their previous stories. Because I don't know if I'm right or wrong. Sorry, go on.
Oh, sorry, yeah, I would guess that that's what they want to do. Like I've sent stuff to big mags before, and I think I came closer before I'd even read any of them.
Yeah,
like, I was just like, okay, you're a sci-fi mag, you'll like this. This is kind of sci-fi.
Yeah.
And I got closer then, and then when you start to read them, you do double guess them, and you do start to try and please them in a way. And I think that's a definite balance. And I think that some people who can list these many big magazines that they've got their name into, what they're saying, I think, is I mean, it does seem that what they're saying is I'm very good at pleasing editors, which is a particular skill.
Yeah.
And something that should be commended, but it's not. Perhaps it's not quite the same as saying that I have really done something authentic. I don't know. It seems like a balance. Those two things seem at odds with one another.
Yeah, I think it's one thing if you're a fan of a publication. Like I really like Black Static. I like the past couple of issues that I've read of Black Static have just been absolutely amazing, and I sort of have a rough idea of this type of thing that they publish, but. I wouldn't. It's one thing to be a fan of something and to write something that you think is going to suit that, and then actually going out there and just trying to, like I say, ape a publication or, like you say, second guess an editor's preferences. I think I have much more respect for you writing something like Jesus of Scumberg and going out there and being, something I'd never recommend to my grandmother, but it's something that you've completely got out there and you've done something completely new and original. I don't think I've ever read anything like it. I have more respect for that than you trying to ape one of your favourite authors, and just be another Stephen King ripoff,
Well, I really appreciate you saying that. And I think it's so funny because, I mean, this is a horror podcast. I don't want to chat about horror and everything, but it's like when I get stories in horror anthologies, it does seem that Stephen King is the gold standard for many different people. And then it's like one of two things kind of happens in the anthology reviews. It's either like, most of these stories I thought were great, but there was this one story by this Leo guy that was like crazy, or it's like, I loved all of these stories, but there was this one random story that just totally did not work for me. What the hell was the guy doing?
Yeah.
But I love that, and I would like all of my favorite stuff polarizes, and I think that polarizing is a great sign of authenticity. You've just got to hope you get those glowing reviews with all the terrible ones, and it's not to say that I feel good about people reading stuff of mine and not enjoying it. It's just that I don't see how I can do what I want and that also not happening sometimes.
Yeah,
No.
like pushing the boundaries. I was just reading an article about that too, like where Stephen King was even saying something about along the lines of you shouldn't push to be like your literary heroes. You should push to be like your own yourself, because a lot of people, they read all these books by these writers that are called on writing and this writing and that writing, and they think they're gonna take something from them, like some power or some meaning, and make their own, but then they don't realize that doing their own thing, that's what's gonna make them a new Stephen King, not Stephen King, but that new person, that new entity. But so that's why you like you said, this can put you out there, so now you'll be on the map. Like they'll know who you are because they'll say, oh yeah, I remember that story. It's and it's such a great time too, because you have so many different publishers that are willing to do this type and that type. You can just route it to because Hindered Souls does the more risque type of book, so you can get that out there with Manuel.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have a number of things to say to that. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I think, I've talked to other people about Stephen King, and as I understand it, his style of writing was very unusual when he started, and now that I think people have forgotten that because he is such a big mainstream guy. But it's very disconcerting, the idea of carving your own path, and also something I read recently is that you may end up loving styles of writing that aren't even close to yours, which I think is very true. I've been reading loads of stuff over the holidays, just I love this. I don't write like this at all. I'm not even sure I could do this.
Yeah.
And that, yeah. Mm.
Have you read the Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay yet?
I read Head Full of Ghosts by him,
Yeah.
and I didn't get it. I don't think it was for me.
Right. I listened. I was fortunate enough to listen to the audiobook of it, and I think I can imagine it being a better experience on audiobook than it would be reading it. And I believe the same is true of his new book. But his style is like, it's like, you know, all the things that you get taught not to do as a blossoming writer. His style is basically that. you know, loads of adjectives, passive sentences, you know, you name it, and he does it basically. But over description of things, you know. I mean, you know the Grim Reader, you know Adrian, don't you? The reviewer. He said to me like he was really disappointed by Cabin at the End of the World because there's a bit in the book where they're removing a body from the cabin, and it takes like 20 pages or something, and it's just descriptions of what they're doing with this body and this, that, and the other. And I remember him saying that, and then I got it on Audible and I listened to it, and as an audio experience, it's different. You know, it doesn't seem that long. It's probably, I don't know, 10 minutes of a woman reading it out aloud. But I could imagine myself get really annoyed with it if I was actually reading it with my eyes. But as an audio experience, it's quite good. And I'm about halfway through it now. And I think it's really, really good. But it just, he was brought to my mind because we're talking about styles and stuff and the way you write. He's ignored all the rules. You know, he's just like, he's just writing it the way he writes it. But at the end of the day, a good story is a good story. Do you know what I mean? An editor is surely going to overlook that passive sentence on paragraph 5 if this story is just absolutely amazing, you know? And a good story he'll get in, you know, most good publications, you know, that sort of look for that type of thing, I think, anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think it's very true. Sorry, Will, you want to say something?
Oh no, I was just agreeing with with what Gary was saying.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's true. Looking for your own style, like I got some wonderfully encouraging rejections recently from stuff that was apparently shortlisted, and I like to hear that. I was like, awesome, and I thought they were taking so long to get back to me because they couldn't even be bothered rejecting me, but apparently I was close to getting published. And then when I heard that I was close with what I'd sent them, I was like, wow, I'm really glad I didn't bother to try and sculpt something other than exactly what I wanted to write. Because if I got close with that, imagine how many ways I might have double guessed myself if I'd said, oh, people don't like it to go on too long and blah, blah, blah. Like one that I do, one that I know, especially in horror, in contemporary horror now, it's like, you know, the real dread is in the reader's head and in his own imagination. So don't like calm it with the violent descriptions. And then I thought, well, I'll tell you what's really violent is a very long, violent, disgusting description. Like that'll stay in your head. Yeah. It's like, but I know that that's kind of anathema. But it's just a stylistic choice that's still available. There are, you know, there are decent principles that work most of the time. I mean, definitely, if you have passive sentences, you can justify some of them. And you should in fact, you should use just a couple just to show people that you're relaxed and like confident about your style, I think.
I think so. I think that you can edit the hell out of a short story. I've done it myself. And I was saying to Will when we were having the conversation about, you know, trying to ape the style of a magazine, I was saying how when I write, when I've had a publication in mind for it, I've edited it to fit that publication's preferences. It's always made the story really shit, you know, and you read back and you look at it, it's like, yeah, I've tried to make this 5,000 word short story 2,000 words because this publication likes short stories, you know, short stories. You know, I've removed all passive sentences because this publication doesn't like passive sentences. You know, I believe this publication doesn't like anything to do with zombies, so I've removed all the zombie references. You know, and it just goes on and on. It's like you're just taking something and you're just squeezing all the life out of it, and you know it.
Sorry, I've interrupted.
No, it's fine, man.
Yeah, sure. No, I mean, I absolutely agree, and I think you find when you look at what works compared to what you're, you know, telling yourself not to do, you make up a lot of this yourself. And when say a publication says no zombies, Like, if you look at what they're actually saying, they're like, we don't publish that because we don't think that's going to work. But they don't, like, nobody knows where your imagination is going to take you. Maybe you write this, like, really killer zombie story. Like, maybe you write one that then convinces people that there's still space for it. And I think, like, you know, you can sense when somebody's heart is behind a piece of writing, and you can sense somebody's desperation. And it's never a good look. And I also think that, you know, we all know these kind of top magazines and publishers, like, it can get so self-referential. You just see, like, they're going to publish one story and then another story is the same title, but instead of fairy, it says monster in it. And I'm like, but I just don't, it's a real shame, because I know that you become kind of, the bigger an audience you have, the bigger the pressure is on you, and perhaps the narrower it gets. I'm not sure, but I'm all for experimentation, and I'm all for new stuff. Yeah.
Are you still on the short story circuit? Are you still writing? Have you submitted to Cemetery Dance and all that?
Yeah, I did. I mean, you wouldn't think I am, because I'm getting so many rejections. You wouldn't think that I'm actually sending stuff out.
Join the club.
I mean, the thing is, like, I think, you know, each year I try to push myself, and I think I'm getting so many because I'm trying tougher places, which is a good thing. And I think also this is like the real resilience training time. If you can write when absolutely, like, when very few people give a shit that you're doing it, like, if this is you building the muscle that will last you for life, it's a very important time. It's a very difficult time, but also, like I say, you have this opportunity to explore different avenues and be, you know, as creative as you want before you get a big audience, and perhaps if you ever get one and then end up very pressured to please them.
That's my, I think I've told you before on one of your podcasts, that the way I look at it is trying to perfect something small and you know, doing well on that level, and then then I'm going to think about doing novellas and novels and trying to sort of expand myself as a writer. But this year I've been the same. I've been submitting only to, you know, the sort of semi-pro and pro publications, and just in the meantime I've been writing, trying to improve my standard. And I've had like 0 acceptances this year in the short story circuit, just because I've been aiming for the Clark's Worlds, and I've been aiming for the publications that take a little bit longer to get back to you. I know that I could submit some of these stories to some of the free publications and it'd get published tomorrow, and it'd be a nice boost of confidence. But that's not what it's about. I don't think I want to sort of challenge myself a little bit, and I think my writing's improving as a result of it. I'm trying to, you know, up the level to meet these publications.
Yeah, more power to you. I think it's a good thing. I think, like, you know, you kind of define how much your fiction is worth, and nobody will question your valuation. So if you're sending something amazing that you've worked on for months to somebody who's not going to give you any money for it, they're not going to say no. But it's not like you've done the best thing. Like I say, I think that's fair. And I think also a great thing about social media and like how candid other authors are about it is I've seen people who are published by all the best and they don't get publications for 2 years. And what they're saying in that is they have standards that they're holding to, and they're not just chasing publication. And
you know, it's definitely like, I mean, look at all the greats, like when you hear about their rejections, like obviously Stephen King, they got Dean Koontz, you know, they got hundreds of rejections, and people like, you know, when you get so easily accepted, sometimes it kind of takes that away. Like you just feel, oh man, you know, look at this, I'm getting accepted left and right. But like you said, you have to challenge yourself and put yourself to the higher, I guess you could say, standards, and because those places that they say, you know, hundreds of rejections, like Dean Koontz, he got tons. Like, you know, I remember reading about all the like the cork boards that have them all, you know, tacked to the board and everything.
Yeah, well, you know, I've found through what I've sent out that there have to be several steps for me to feel good about it. One, I need to have written something that I'm genuinely proud of. Send it to a place that I actually respect. and they need to accept it and understand it. But if those three things happen, I won't feel like I've done something good. If I've written something to please someone else, and then that gets rejected, like, how good is that going to make me feel? Probably.
Yeah.
Like, I really feel like I've used my time effectively writing stuff that I honestly wanted to say, above doing anything else.
I mean, and can you imagine writing something that you really respect, and you sort of send it out there, and then one day you just have this sort of depressive moment where you're like, oh yeah, I'll submit to this free publication because I quite like the front covers they do, and you submit to this publication, it gets accepted, and then you've got this story that you've sort of worked on and you believe in, and you spent literally weeks and weeks and weeks putting together, and it's there alongside 50 other 50 other stories that haven't been edited or checked, in this little e-zine that you don't get paid for, and it's like that's now a reprint now. Whatever I do with it, that's just like, it break my heart, and that is why I'm just sort of, the stories that I believe in particular are just going to keep going and going and going around the circuits and until I find an acceptance. But every so often you do write a story that's, you think it's okay, and it's like, it'll probably fit a purpose, and you just sort of keep it there, and it might be picked up by an anthology or something that's, suitable. And I've got a few of them as well that I'm slightly less precious about. But no matter what, I think the stories that you really believe in, like you say, you look for these little tick boxes in the back of your mind that you wanted to hit, and only certain publications do that.
Yeah, I mean, and I know, like, from our experience, that these free publications do serve a purpose, and it is that encouragement and that validation, because when I first started sending something out, I thought there was something fundamentally wrong with my writing that nobody was ever going to tell me about, and like, I was just only going to get rejection from everyone. So just to hear that there was somebody at the other end of that email who actually enjoyed reading something I'd sent out was a big plus. But of course, your standards raised over time, and you want more and more. I mean, for example, like, when the first acceptance I got was for Bonespin Slip Space, which is incredibly weird. And I'd sent it out and just been like, well, I mean, they'll say no, but at least I'll feel like I'm like doing something. Then when they said yes, I was over the moon, man. And I was in tears calling my sister, just be like, oh, somebody actually accepted something. And then, like, every year afterwards, though, I'm like, I better get a novella accepted. And like, if I do get accepted, I feel only relief, not like joy anymore, because my standards keep going. I mean, that's unhealthy to a certain extent, but the standards do raise, and you do want higher, but it is, maybe it's ultimately an arbitrary game. I'm not very sure.
It's definitely an ego game. It definitely strokes an ego. And I do look at it as a game. In a way, the buzz of the acceptance, the disappointment of the rejection. You occasionally get a bit of feedback, which strokes your ego a little bit, even though it doesn't get in a publication. It is a bit of a game. But I recently had a rejection from one of the publications, but they put a bit of feedback in there as well, which was great, and even that was good. We really liked the story. It's very well written. It just wasn't sort of for our magazine, and it's like, well, fair enough, but it still made me feel better about myself.
Those are great. Yeah.
And I who published Bonespin the first time around?
That's Psychedelic Horror Press. That's by Nicholas Patnod and his wife, I believe. Yeah.
Oh, okay. But was it republished by Unnerving?
Yeah, because Psychedelic Horror Press only had the paperback rights, so Unnerving did the ebook. It's very cool.
Oh, right, okay. I wondered why. Yeah. You learn something new every day. And Unnerving published the Grimhaven Disaster as well, didn't they?
They published the Grimhaven Disaster. They published a short story of mine in issue 3 alongside a story with Marchese.
Yes.
They also published a novelette of mine called Brothers in the Hardened Hearts Anthology. All incredibly weird stuff that I'm so happy to have gotten support for, particularly that story in Hardened Hearts. It's incredibly strange, and I wouldn't change a word of it, but I know many readers who might.
Gosh, it's one of those publications I actually own. I've got the Kindle of it, but I've not read it yet. It's like at the bottom of a massive pile. But I've heard such good things about it.
It's an excellent book. I gave a copy to one of my managers and then never asked him for feedback on my work. But I think it is like something that can be widely enjoyable and thought-provoking. It's a very, very good anthology.
Yeah. Do your friends and family, do your work colleagues in particular know that you're a writer, and do you let them read your stuff generally?
I mean, I could go on about what a strange country Norway is, but I really doubt that they give a shit. And I think they wouldn't get it's. I mean, you know how it is. If you tell people you're a writer, they'll just be like, yeah, well, J.K. Rowling got loads of rejections, and you're like, I'm for sure not writing the next Harry Potter, but cheers. So they or yeah. King as well, like Stephen King says this, Stephen King says that. Did you know this is an exclusive for your podcast that I cut out all references to Stephen King on my podcast? Him and Donald Trump need no help from me being talked about. Get off my platform, both of you.
It's true. We always talk about Stephen King every. I think everybody does
the same. I think.
Oh, you're welcome to. It's my own rule, but I feel free to talk about it here, which maybe is a bit hypocritical, but I mean he's like, I have liked a lot of his stuff, and I think like if there is like a king of genre fiction, he's a great one because he's so supportive and encouraging, and just like a lover of literature and of writing, which I think we can all aspire to be.
Yeah. I think one of the things that makes him so memorable are his characters. Like, I mean, his stories are great too, but I think the characters pretty much build those. Like, some people build the story and then they put the characters in, but I think his characters, they ring so true. That's why he's so out there, and so everybody like.
Oh yeah, no, I mean he's like when he's written something great, he's a great writer. Though he's not a particular favorite of mine. I think I'm kind of I don't rush out to buy his next book. Did you guys read the latest one?
Well,
what? Sorry,
I think Gary did. The Outsider.
Oh yeah, The Outsider. Yeah, I did a review of it for Aphotic Realm.
Nice.
I listened to it on audiobook, and I was I couldn't tell you how many chapters I was into it. I was probably about a third of the way through it, and a friend of mine who'd also got the audiobook, he said, "What do you think of it?" And I said, "Honestly, it's one of the best King books I've sort of listened to in a very long time." And then I think it sort of took me unawares a little bit. I think I was maybe blowing it up a little bit in my own mind, but after that, it went off the boil a little bit for me, and I didn't think that the antagonist was particularly scary either. What did you think of it, Leo?
Me? Well, the last Stephen King I read was Gerald's Game in preparation for the film. And I just the guy just puts so many words on a page without saying anything for me personally. Just my own preference and style. I love that film, and I love the film 1922, which I believe is based on one of his novellas from one of those novella collections. Those are both great films. Like, he's an incredible storyteller, and like the film of It as well was awesome. Yeah,
I liked it.
Yeah, but then I read most of that book as well, but it's rambles on. The passages in It were brilliant, and I thought they would work as short stories, but the whole thing overall was just like a bit unfocused for me.
Yeah, he's starting to actually narrow down a little. He's getting into the whole get to the point and be concise. But I think the whole thing that made him was his 50 pages of pre I guess setting and stuff. I think that's what made the characters sort of real. But I mean, that was sort of like in the old days, I guess he's trying to get a little bit more like with the times, but maybe just a mix of both, just keep to what made him him. Because even Dean Koontz, I mean, he switched a little bit. I haven't read anything like recent, but a couple of his more recent ones, he switched also. And I guess you have to. It's just like, with even with musicians these days, you get your Metallica or your Madonna or whoever, and they have to just change it up a little bit to get the new generation of fans and everything.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's very true, and it's interesting to remember about all these big names is that they too are just as kind of conscious of the culture as we are, and desperate to prove themselves over and over. So yeah, I think that's true. What other horror authors are you both enjoying at the moment?
At the minute, gosh, Paul Tremblay. Like I said, I have enjoyed Cabin at the End of the World. I really liked House of Dead Leaves. Is it Danielowski?
Oh yeah,
who wrote that?
That's a great book.
And is it Alan Barker? Oh gosh, what was the story called that he wrote? It was the Evil Dead one set in the 1970s.
Oh, cool.
It's gonna really annoy me. But it's like it's semi-autobiographical. It's a piece of fiction, but it's about these kids growing up in the 70s and the video nasty scene and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And he was an Evil Dead fan, and it's all about him trying to get a copy of the Evil Dead in this story. But that was absolutely fantastic. I think it's Andrew Barker, I think he was called.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I've been quite enjoying that. I've been doing a lot of graphic novel type things lately as well.
Cool.
The old EC Comics ones and things like that, and Uzumaki as well. Who wrote that now?
Is that a Junji Ito one?
Ito, yeah, that was it. You're right, yeah. Which the Spiral one.
Oh.
Which is, some of the artwork in it is horrible, but it's just so good. So yeah, no, a wide variety. There's not one person that I can honestly say, oh yeah, he's my go-to. I mean, I like Adam Neville. I'll always buy his literature.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's no one sort of big go-to person that I'll go to. But Stephen King, I said this on another episode. I'm getting a bit tired of him.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's almost like his work's sort of just getting a little bit jaded for me. I'm just getting sick of. He's got like 3 or 4 books out this year, hasn't he?
Wow.
So
the thing about people who are that prolific is you're just kind of in awe of them. I don't think that it's impossible to enjoy it all, but you just kind of, when I see these books coming out, I mad respect for it. But I really, I don't know. How about you, Will? What are you reading?
A few things. I'm trying to get through a few stories. It's just time and writing and everything sort of gets in the way. But slowly I'm going through. I'm finishing up Kelly Evans' Mordecai and
Nice.
Manuel Tapia's Sugar Skulls. I'm halfway through that.
Yeah.
On the mainstream, I'm doing Dan Brown's Origins. I had started that maybe like 20% through. And audio book-wise, I'm listening to Stephen King's Doctor Sleep, the part 2 of The Shining.
Shining.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the narrator's pretty good. Sometimes I'm thinking it's King, but I haven't looked it up. But he does the voice as well. Like you could. That's one good thing about the audiobooks. Gary sort of opened it up to me, and my wife's listening to audiobooks too. So it's like, I said, let me just give it a spin. You can get them free off the library website. Just put your library card in, you get it off the app, and it's you could see everything clearly because if the narrator does well, you can hear the voices of the people and everything's separated. It's easy to follow. I've listened to a couple of podcasts that weren't so good. It was just like a monotone reader list, just doing the voices. And I had a book, rather a story, in the Monsters Exist anthology.
Yeah.
And that horrible woman, she has a podcast that she does where she narrates those stories. And I mean, I wasn't too pleased with the story myself, but we're always our worst critics. But she did a really good job of narrating. And if you get a good narrator, you could really, bring out the story.
Yeah, I think that, like, audiobooks are a real art, and I'm trying to listen to them now on my walk to work. And I mean, the quality is super varied. Sometimes you're just listening to it for ages, and then it's like a man narrating it, and then it turns out it's a female character. And
Yeah.
it's like a team of people. You're like, why did you choose that? I've got no idea what's going on anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was saying last week in the podcast, there's one that Adam Neville has a short story collection. I think is it called Hasty for the Dark? But that's out on audiobook, and it's one I listened to. And they used an American sort of voice actor to do the reading. But the first story is set in England, and it's about this haunted house, and it's you're listening to it, and it just completely takes you out of the story because you got this American guy going, "Mummy told me not to go to the house up on the hill. Yeah, I'm a very naughty little boy." Putting on this awful English accent, and straight away it just takes you out of it, And it's like, and you find out that in this collection there's like 3 or 4 stories that all need an English accent. So why didn't you just pick? Why didn't you just pick an English voice actor? It just doesn't make sense.
Was it? Oh no,
Sorry.
I was going to say, was it Dobby doing the voice acting?
It might be Dobby from Harry Potter. Yeah. Yeah. What are you listening to at the minute, or reading at the moment? Do you have any go-to authors at the moment, Leo?
Question. Go-to authors at the moment. Lionel Shriver came out with a collection of short stories this year. She only brings out books like every 2 years. So her book's called Property. It's not like... I mean, like, one of my favorite books is We Need to Talk About Kevin by her, which is about like a school shooter narrated by the mother of a school shooter or something. And like, that's how I tap into horror, interestingly, through these non-horror authors. So like, I love anything she writes because she taught me like to not really care what anyone might think of you. Because even like when I see how she writes characters and just how horribly they talk to one another, it's like you must have to share some of the opinions of these characters in order to write them this effectively, and you do not seem like a nice person for having written this. But it just seems so...
Yeah.
I mean, you're connecting with a special part of the reader when you're doing it. So I love anything by her. I'm reading A Book of American Martyrs by Joyce Carol Oates. Do you like her stuff? You know her?
Yeah.
So her, and I'm reading Snow Crash by Neil Stevenson. He's another hit this guy. I love The Diamond Age. I tried this one a while back, but I didn't really get into it. Like, it seems like one of his better ones.
I'm just looking at We Need to Talk About Kevin. It's on Audible. I might give that a blast, actually. It looks really good. It sounds really good. Yeah.
I was looking downstairs and I found a whole bunch of like soft covers, and one of them was Stephen Rice's Snow Garden. Anybody read that?
No.
I was going to give it a shot. I mean, I have the book, so I think my wife had bought it, or maybe she had bought it for me because I had mentioned that Rice's son got into writing and stuff. And that was like one of the first ones, I think. Yeah, I just remembered that.
That's cool. One other thing. So my dad is at the Edinburgh Festival where all these authors are, and he just met Åsne Særestad, who is a Norwegian journalist. And I just finished her book called One of Us, which is all about the Anders Breivik thing.
All right, yeah.
It's incredibly well written because people here in Norway love crime novels. They're just obsessed by them. And she's written this whole journalistic account in a crime novel style. It was like super compelling. And so my dad got her to sign it to me. Which is very
that's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Is it like a true story that she's written? Is it?
Yes. It's a journalistic account of like Anders Breivik's life and the life of some other people who were at this island on the date of the whole horrible event.
I love stuff like that. There's one called Fred and Rose: The Full Story by Howard Sunas.
Oh my god!
And that's a journalistic account, and I've listened to that 3 or 4 times. I just really enjoy it.
That story is absolutely insane. I started to hear about it through the My Favorite Murder podcast. Do you know it?
No, I don't know that.
My Favorite Murder is so good. I would not recommend, like I've been doing, listening to it while you live alone on an island.
Oh my god.
It's just absolutely terrifying. I couldn't actually sleep here for the first few nights. It wasn't a good idea. So that one, and also, I mean, Last Podcast on the Left is another good podcast. I like that one.
Wow. I mean, there's so many out there, isn't there? It's unbelievable. I mean, so many of my sort of writer friends, yourself included, and A.A. Medina and Dustin Shiley Oak from the Aphotic Realm, and you've got all these people, all your friends have podcasts, it's like everyone's got a podcast, I've got a podcast.
Your cat wanders in and it's like, oh, I'm inspired by you guys. I'm going to start a podcast.
Exactly,
I'm all for creative expression and inspiring other people to do it. But, yeah,
absolutely. Why not? And Losing the Plot's going strong, isn't it? How long have you been doing that now?
Sure is. I've been doing it a year and 7 months because I started January 2017. And thank you so much for coming on.
No problem. Twice.
Marchese, of course, I would love to talk to you in future.
Definitely.
And I'm really impressed by how this podcast works because when I talked to Gary and Madeline Swan at the same time, it was kind of disconcerting. I'm glad that in my podcast I get to cut stuff. I was just like rambling nonsense. Just fine. I think it's a bit like I consider the conversations you have on my podcast the first draft. And it's like just say whatever is honestly on your mind and we'll find out what was interesting about it later. So I really like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean I think it's anything that tries to stick to a plan, like that's what makes your podcast an individual entity, because you have that special thing. I know you said losing the plot, so basically you're not talking about writing, right? You're talking about just the life of the person.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really. I mean, when I look at interviews with authors on YouTube and things like that, I mean, I started to learn how to write from watching things like that, and they would always say, this is very flattering, but I really don't think that you're going to get any insights beyond what I put in the page, which is, of course, the dream that you've done the perfect job, but they don't actually know what is interesting about themselves. And I have on many occasions drawn out many things that gave me new insights into a creative person's work based on them talking about their lives. And actually, because of that, like when I know I've done a really good job, that's when it's most interesting to me. And in future, I will continue, I think from now on, to focus more on indie artists who are not quite yet jaded by the idea of being interviewed. Because I think the people who've been interviewed a lot, it's sometimes I break them out of it and I'm like, listen, I just want to have a conversation with you. I don't want to ask typical questions, but sometimes they're just so geared up to give you exactly the same thing that they've given hundreds of people in the past that it's very difficult to get them to engage with you. The best episodes for me are the ones where I'm really engaged in an interesting conversation with somebody whose work I really respect. But I've had to kind of, everyone in the first few years of running a podcast has to wander around until they find the thing that they want to do. But having had this holiday time to reflect, I know that's what I'm going to do going forwards.
Yeah, I was going to say, how would you see Losing the Plot evolving? Are you going to keep it the same format, or what's going to happen going forward?
Good question. I think, yes. So I want it to be just, I'm going to continue just seeking people out by myself who I think are interesting. You don't have to be an author to be on my podcast. You can be a creative of any type. You can be making YouTube videos or music or, whatever it is. But I'll continue trying to seek out people by myself because I want to do something that's individual and kind of niche, I suppose. Other people's podcasts have different goals, and often what's happened now is I've got some kind of publicists and publishers to refer people to me that they want me to interview, which is awesome because I get advanced reviewer copies or whatever they're called, and I read the book and then I'll interview. But unfortunately, I get the same press release email as 5 other people do, and then 5 interviews with the same person appear in the same week. And again, if they're geared up to do that, they don't really want to. It takes a lot of energy to have an engaging conversation with somebody, and I don't think that that's something that interests me less. But if it is somebody whose book that I really loved and want to talk to them about, of course I'll continue to do that. But I want to focus more in future on indie artists of all varieties, musicians, painters, video makers, other podcasters, whatever it is.
Of all the Losing the Plots that you've done, which one's a personal favourite of yours, besides the one with me, obviously?
Yeah, of course. I have many favorites. I mean, of this year, mine with Adrian Medina sticks out in particular. He was
he bared his heart to you, didn't he, man? I listened to that.
Yeah, it was wonderful how open he was, and I really appreciated everything that he told me about that. And it really, what a babe, what a lovely guy for telling me all that.
Yeah.
And who else? The year before, there was this woman, Jean Spicuzza, that I talked to. She wrote, directed, and starred in her own film about. The film was about a demonic psychiatrist because she had she'd had some horrible experience with a psychiatrist who was, I think, implanting false memories in her head or something like that. Like a malicious person that she'd run across. And then so she was using this personal experience to turn it into something creative, which was just amazing. And I loved it. And I loved talking to her and talking about that. And we just had so much to talk about. And she was super open and lovely. And she's got another film coming out this year. And I want to watch that and interview her about it as well. But, Madeline Swan, I love Madeline for coming on.
Yeah, she's awesome, Madeline.
Yeah. So many episodes stick out. Those are the ones off the top of my head. Yeah.
Yeah. Talking of A.A. Medina, did you read his book Siphon at all?
I did. I thought it was brilliant.
I was going to say, because that's the closest I've read recently to Jesus of Scumberg.
Interesting.
In terms of the pushing the envelope a little bit, there's some quite disgusting bits in it, isn't there? The main character goes through.
And it's also hindered Souls Press.
Yes.
And
exactly.
I mean, he's done this very clever thing in telling a kind of original semi-vampire story without really pointing out that that's what it is.
I didn't realise till near the end. I was like, you think, how stupid can you be not to spot this at the end? But at the end, I was like, oh my god, it's a vampire story, and I was, and then I thought, well, respect, for putting that together, because I was certainly stupid enough not to spot it until pretty late on.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Thank God for that.
So what is it like? It's like a vampire story, sort of along the lines of what was that one by Richard Matheson?
I'm Legend.
Yeah, I'm Legend.
Oh, yeah, that one was basically like his take on vampires. So you'd say it's like that, right? Like I like when authors do that, when they recreate a genre, but they make it into this whole new thing. But then at the end, when you put all the pieces together, you're like, shit, this is a vampire story, But I got the idea because I mean the pictures with the guy lifting his head up, and you got the neck showing. And then Siphon. I didn't read it yet, but I got that I got that image.
Mm. What would you say, Gary? Is that a good comparison?
I wouldn't say it's like I'm Legend. I would say it's just a really strange story with a guy acting very oddly, and you get to a certain point, and when he's obviously got this sort of lust for. It is a bloodlust he's got, isn't it? And you sort of work. It's only sort of right near the end you work out sort of what he is. Basically, it's the main character, the protagonist, I suppose. But he's a quite an unlikable character. I think I remember telling that because I did a bit of a beta read for it. I think I remember saying to Adrian, it was he's a really unlikable character, but that's what makes it such a good story. A bit like Jesus of Scumberg. He's not a nice person, but I mean, I'm only sort of so far into it, but I get the impression there's a bit more to him than initially meets the eye. Am I right there, Leo?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's I mean, I'm always really suspicious of the idea of rooting for a character, and when I see that, I think like, well, it's so easy to write. Well, I don't know if it's easy to write someone who's likable, but it's easy to like someone who's likable. It's not easy to like somebody who isn't likable. And maybe what compels you to keep reading is not to make sure that the character is safe or that they overcome their obstacles, but you just want to see what horrible thing they do next, which I think is what propels Jesus of Scumberg. I think I've been accused in life of sympathy for the devil. Like, I can be far too empathetic when you should just go, I think that guy's gone too far, like, he doesn't deserve your sympathy anymore. So I think with this character, he's I he's doing like horrendous stuff, and like when I don't know if there's something I would ever write again, like in that style. Because even when I was rereading it and there were parts that I'd forgotten, I like almost audibly like groaned out loud, just like, for God's sakes, Leo, did you have to put this in? But the thing is, I think the test here is, I've gone into his whole childhood, which is also very surreal. But I think I just wonder what anyone expects him to be like, and I think the same is true of G.G. Allen, who inspired it. Is people are saying, oh, like he's obviously this like piece of shit and like a horrible guy, and it's easy to hate him. But I don't really know how anyone expected him to act if anything he claims about his past is true. It's just so irreparably broken and sent out into the world. And I think the thing that compels me about that story is the idea of pursuing temporary narcissistic pleasures versus spending each day building on something which is uncomfortable and less fun, but perhaps more worth it in the end.
Yeah, I think there was quite an interesting line in it that I quite liked. I'm going to kind of paraphrase because I can't remember exactly what it said, but it was something along the lines of, one of the Gila, I think, says to Jesus, do you love me? And he said, well, for today, or something like that. I love you for today. And I thought that was really, really good, and it sort of summed up the lifestyle that he led, in the story, and just like living on the knife edge the whole time, living for today. And I thought it was a really good line.
Oh, great! I'm glad. I think if you reach the end, you'll see that I do add some caveats. I'm not saying go out and do anything this guy does. There are
too late.
Like, yeah. Am I that desperate for sales yet that I'll take that level of controversy? give it another week. See where I am. But yeah, I don't know, because
it definitely makes me look at condoms a whole different way.
Yeah.
There's one scene in there. It's like,
yeah. They can be handy storage devices.
Apparently. So, of all your little novellas that you brought out, do you have a particular personal favourite, or?
I think I like them all. I'm so glad for the reception they've gotten, because I swear I just sit there going, this is exactly what I want to write, and then I'm going to send it out there, and then when people say, this is great and I like it, I'm like, wow, when I hear that, I go, well, I'm definitely going to keep doing what I'm doing, because I love how creatively fulfilling this is more than anything.
Yeah.
So I think, Bone Spin Slit Space will always have a special place in my heart, because it's the very first thing I got accepted, and it's just exactly what I wanted to write. And I think I didn't know it was going to be so violent and surreal. I had a kind of outline for it, and I thought it would end sooner than it did. Characters entered it I didn't think were going to be there and everything. So I kind of waive responsibility for it in that respect. And what I really like about the Grimhaven disaster, I was thinking about it recently, and I remember I was on the Unnerving podcast, and Eddie Generous, who accepted the story and published it, said that my characters were nasty assholes.
Thank you.
When you said that at the time, I was just like, sure, yeah, why not? But then each one of those characters, what they say is something somebody genuinely said to me. Like, it was
wow.
The way I find my way into character often is by using a real quote or something that anchors it to the real world, and then I go, okay, I know what kind of person you are. And when I think about teenagers, that's what I think about. And I know they're not like perhaps the typical teenagers you might find in stories, but stories about teenagers are so, if they're designed for teenagers, they have to take out a lot of things that teenagers do, which
yeah.
So I don't know if they are. I don't think they're nasty. Well, maybe they're just nasty assholes at that age. But who wasn't?
Yeah.
Doesn't mean they deserve love and no torture.
Will still is.
Do you guys have you guys written novellas? Are you going to try it?
That's the next thing on my my schedule. I think possibly the end of this year, beginning of next year, I'm going to start putting one together. I think what next thing I'll have published is probably my next short story collection. I've got quite a few that have come, the rights have come back to me. So I'll be putting that out, and I'll hopefully that'll do okay. Mechanisms of Despair did quite well, really, for a first collection. But yeah, I am intrigued by the idea of novella. I don't know if I'm up to a point of where I can write a novel and invest myself that much into something. But the novella, you get inspired, like stories from Madeline Swan, that tales from Madeline Swan, and yourself writing these sort of shorter form stories. And it does kind of appeal to me a little bit, something that's, easily digestible within a day or two,
Yeah. I think, short stories are their own art form, and I wouldn't say they're even I think they're what I'm worst at, frankly. I think some people really do turn it into its own art form, and there's maybe it's just because we're men. There's this idea that it's got to be really, really big. Like, the longer it is, the more important it is. I think men think like that. Even people who publish long novels. I think that's
Will does. Gosh, but
So I guess my point is, if you did just stick with short stories,
sometimes harder to find a home for.
Wait, which one's harder to
Sorry,
find?
say again.
Gary, you were speaking. Sorry, I've interrupted.
Sorry, you said something and my audio feed cut out for a second. So you were saying something about short stories?
Oh yeah, if you kept writing short stories, that would be great. Like I say, they're their own art form, and people have turned them.
Yeah,
done amazing things with them.
Yeah, I'm kind of lucky with the second collection I'm going to put together. I'm going to have more stories to choose from than the first collection, because Mechanisms of Despair was just a collection of Deadman's Tome stories, and this one's going to draw from paid publications, so it's like I kind of hope the quality might be a little bit better, and Mechanisms of Despair is what it is, and I'm very proud of it, and it's raised quite a bit of money for charity and stuff. But this next one I hope is going to be better, hopefully. The difficult second album. But we'll see. Well, what about you, Will? Have you thought of doing a novella or anything like
that? No. So I'm not against it. I'm not saying it won't happen. I was actually going over some of my older stories because lately I've been in sort of a cocoon where I'm studying a lot of stuff, and I'm applying some of the new things that I've learned to my older stories, and it's such an awakening. I had sent you, remember that story I sent you, Gary, and you said it was much clearer and all this other stuff. So that story I have that I finished pretty much. I just got to change the ending from first person because the guy, obvious reasons I don't want to say, but it's the ending I want to change to from first person. And then I have another story that I was working on, a short story called The Cat, that I was trying to figure out where I can fit that in. But then I have 2 novels I've finished that I just need to go over and edit, so they're done pretty much. I just want to focus on those.
Nice.
Because the thing is, I was joking with the group. We have a little writing group on Twitter, and I was joking, and they say, writers cut to the chase, but I just want to cut to chase, the bank. I get some writers that they say, "Oh, I'm just writing for myself." And I'm not saying they're not. You definitely have to write for yourself, because there will be somebody out there that will listen to it, and read it. There's billions of people in the world, so there has to be at least 1 million that will listen to what you like. It's just finding them. But I always tell them, I'm like, look, okay, that's fine and dandy. You're writing for yourself, but eventually you're going to try to publish that, right? Oh, no, I'm just writing for myself. I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever.
Yeah, I wonder if people say that to themselves kind of in retrospect when they see that they're not getting a lot of stuff published, which is a shame. It's like, I think like when you start, I'm going off on a tangent here, I guess, but like when you start sending stuff out, the lesson is not like you can hear people tell you like everyone gets rejected, but you also need to learn, oh, I also get rejected by properly getting rejected. Somehow you feel like you'll be the exception to the rule. And so I wonder when people say that they're just writing for themselves, if, you know, they're kind of licking their own wounds for not yet getting stuff published.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I get what you're saying. I think we'll all be licking our wounds when Cemetery Dance rejects us all.
Speak for yourself, guys. It'll be me and Stephen King on a panel, like in some, like wherever he's from, Maine. We'll go back to Maine, be like, haha, was this the house where you wrote it? I love all your books. They're perfect. I wouldn't cut a page. I read hi Joe. I loved whatever the hell your novella collection was called. I definitely got through it.
Strange Weather. Was it Strange Weather?
Yeah, Strange Weather. Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, I knew it. I knew the answer.
Yeah, of course you did. But the thing is, Leo, you're undone because both of them listen to this podcast.
Oh, so... twist ending. I like it.
There you go.
But did you hear next week we're having Joe Hill on?
Yeah, you go.
Oh, yeah. Tell him I loved that novella collection. It was highly readable.
I'm guessing you didn't like it then.
I tried so hard. Where did I get the idea I was going to like that? I can't remember. I think I tried The Fireman because lots of people were reading The Fireman. And I was like, oh, actually, I loved the beginning. It just kind of got a bit rambly in the middle for me. But no, I mean, unfortunately, it wasn't just for me. I'm just joking around, but nah, it didn't catch my attention.
Yeah, you know, I just picked up the Stranger Weather, I think it's called.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And I just picked it up. I liked Horns. You know, I really liked Horns. And there was another one, Heart-Shaped Box. I thought that he pretty much is, the way I would describe him is like he's like his father, but then he has like a mix of like White Zombie redoing Halloween. Like he's got that kind of new age, kind of biker sort of thing. What was that other story that when you go to Christmas Land? Nosferatu.
Oh, Nosferatu.
Yeah, that was really. I mean, I really liked that. I thought it was very original.
Yeah, I like his stuff. I think he's more speculative than his dad, though. I think if you listen to 20th Century or read 20th Century Ghosts, the first short story collection he did, it's more sort of speculative fiction than horror.
Well, Nosferatu actually gets into his father's type of horror.
Yeah, it's a Christmas Land thing, and there's
some scenes where the kids, like he describes how they look, and it's and even Stephen King, I think in Doctor Sleep, he mentions Christmas Land and the guy, Charlie Manx.
Yeah, he does actually. Yeah, he does mention it. Huh.
Do you know? It's so funny that you guys are talking about submitting to Cemetery Dance and everything, because I know that other writers love to talk about where they're sending stuff. I just think they're setting themselves up for failure. It's not something you see me doing. Yeah. Because it's like if you've submitted it, right, and then you're going to post about it because you want encouragement. Encouragement for what? You already did it. Like you're just setting yourself up for failure because people are going to want to follow up to that story. And I know what like 99% of the follow-ups to that story is it didn't pan out. So
no. I think I was telling Will, there's a guy on Twitter, and what happened was I was searching for. There's a publication called Deciduous Tales.
Oh yeah.
And I was searching for them to see if they had a Twitter page, and the first one that comes up when you search for it is this fella who is an English guy. Every short story he submits, he puts on Twitter. So today I submitted, Jesus of Scumberg to Hindered Souls Press. This is submission number 99 of, blah de blah for this year, and then he'll have the number of rejections he's got and the number of acceptances on each and every tweet that he does. And I'm thinking, are you some sort of sadist or something? Why would you do that? and then when he gets rejected, it's like, oh yeah, Deciduous Tales rejected me, which is why he popped up on my feed.
Well, he's killing.
Deciduous Tales.
You could say he's killing two birds with one stone. He doesn't have to make an Excel chart now.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, Deciduous told, and he put something like, I don't think Deciduous Tales actually read my story, but never mind. It's like, oh my God.
Ooh.
Painful.
Well, I don't know why I was so shocked by that, because there's such a lack of professionalism in general with most authors. I don't know why I gasped at that. It doesn't surprise me that somebody out there is doing that. There's somebody out there doing everything wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
It's
like you
him.
said, normally we're, like writers, we're quite a secretive bunch, aren't we? I don't tell everyone the things I've submitted, and I don't think I mention often on social media what I've submitted. Certainly not on social media what I've submitted, and I get rejection. I got a rejection yesterday, but I'm not going to sort of go on Twitter and say, "Oh, I've been on," I've got rejected, and then everyone just sort of says this sort of unfelt sorry. It's like, "Oh, we're sorry." It's like, well, do you really need that off people?
It's bizarre. I think that like every now and then it's so useful, especially when I see like professionally published authors or people who I look up to, and then they say stuff like, "Yeah, I haven't got an acceptance in 2 years." Like that's wonderful, and I love being that open about it because that's valuable information for all of us. But random people getting rejected, you're like, I kind of expected that you would, because that's just what happens. And I don't know what I don't know what you want me to say to you about that, but I resent being told it. So
yeah,
I'm gonna be. No, go on.
I was gonna say there's an element of attention seeking to it a little bit. I think sometimes. It's like, look at me. But like you say, I'm doing what everyone else is doing.
I think it does get confusing because, of course, as authors nowadays, it's a great idea to have all these social media accounts and to be present and to say things. It's just, important to discern that if you have something interesting to say, you should say it. And if you don't, you don't. And what is that? What isn't that? How much should I be posting? It's just, if you're just saying stuff to be in the public eye, like I say, like if you sound desperate or something, it's just not good, It's the same as you say, like if you write a short story that you want other people to like, if you start out from that basis, it's kind of an automatic fail, I think.
And another thing that I found quite interesting about this fella who posted his whole writing career on Twitter was the number of stories that he had out there. I was really surprised. I mean, I average about 10 or 15 stories on the go at a time, in terms of out there, going around the circuit and stuff. But he had I think it was 50 or 60.
Wow.
And it's like, what's the quality of these stories like? Do you know what I mean? I just found it strangely interesting that someone would have that many stories out there. And that's a lot of stories.
Bad social media etiquette is a good sign that somebody isn't writing well, I think. And that's similarly, that's why I think if I love somebody's book or their art, that I will enjoy interviewing them. But I mean, that's kind of, those things correlate, but it's not necessarily the case.
No,
it doesn't bode well for the guy that he's posting like that. I don't think.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I didn't get to submit to the Cemetery Dance. I know it's like a once in a lifetime, not really lifetime. I mean, once in every so years they open up, because I know it's really hard to get in there and stuff, and there's certain criteria. But I figured, I had a story that I was going to submit and it wasn't fully ready, so I didn't want to just submit anything. So I figured I'd rather just finish that story up and get it to the point where I wanted it. So
well, it's fine. You don't care about your career. It's fine. We get it.
I think it might have been worth submitting, though.
Passing up these wonderful opportunities. But that's I think I agree with your method there, and I think also that's an important thing to think about rejections is no, this isn't. It's not like somebody is just going to post one day oh, did you get the news? They're not making books anymore. There's no more magazines. Sorry, it's all over.
Yeah.
Every chance ever.
Gosh.
So oh God, I wish when they rejected that they hadn't burned my only copy of it. Now what will I do? It's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
I only knew that they'd actually started responding to the Cemetery Dance thing because Mark Allen Gunnels posted up that he'd been rejected.
Okay.
So I was like, all right, okay. I think I cracked a joke or something on Twitter about, I'll be expecting my rejection slip soon or something, but it's, I mean, the odds are, what are the odds, even if you're a very, very good writer, getting to they're the number one magazine, aren't they? So you get into there, it's very, very good for you, you know.
Yeah.
But
well, and that's good for. Doesn't he have other stuff published with Cemetery Dance? Or am I?
Mark, no, he wouldn't have done, because this particular submission window was for people who've not been published by them before.
Or published in a magazine, because does he not have something with the press? Or am I making that up? I don't know.
He might have had one of his stories or books might have been reviewed by the website or something. But
hearing that from him is important, and because he's a very good writer and he's very well respected. So I appreciate, like in that case, that's fine. Everyone in future should just defer to me, and I will tell them whether or not their social media post was good or bad. Everyone come to me, I'll let you know. No, waste of time. No, bad, good, useful, you know.
I think he writes a really good story, Mark. There's a story he wrote about, I can't remember what the name of it was called. It might have been Leaves or something.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Did you? It was in the alligators in the sewer. I don't know if it was a reprint or not. Yeah, the chat book, correct. Yeah, and I thought that was really, really good. And funny enough, a couple of weeks ago, he put out a call on Twitter just saying, does anyone want to read like one of my short stories that I'm going to sort of send out, you know? And I sort of answered the call, and he sent me one over, and it was a ghost story, and it was only about 1,000 words long, but it was very well written, you know. And to say he'd put it together in less than a week, you know, I was really, really impressed, you know. But yeah, I have a lot of respect for him, you know.
Yeah.
So
what? Will, you were going to say something?
Oh no, I was going to say I had done a review for Where the Dead Go to Die by him and Aaron Dries for Nerving a while back. Yeah, I remember doing that. I think it had just been released. Where the Dead Go to Die. It was like his take on sort of zombies and like living with them and stuff like that. I guess it wasn't like, you know, they were there and it was sort of, I don't want to like give away the whole premise, but it was just a different take on zombies. That I thought it was a fresh view.
Would you guys ever collaborate with another author?
I have done. I did a short story with Alessandro Martinez that was released by Deadman's Tome, but yeah, no, it's something I would consider doing. Yeah, absolutely, you know. I found it a really interesting exercise, you know, structuring it to try and keep one voice in there, you know, and editing someone else's work and them editing yours and trying to bring it all together. But yeah, no, it's something I definitely think about.
Uh-oh.
Oops. Is this the real horror part of the show?
This is the dark web part. No, me and Gary, Gary sent me something. I haven't looked at it yet, but we were thinking about doing something of that sort.
Yeah.
That's cool. You okay, Gary?
Yes. What happened there?
There's another caller has appeared on the Skype. Is it you guys? Hold on.
Gosh.
Wait, it did?
Leo.
It's like that film Unfriended.
Is it?
Oh yes, yeah.
I'm really excited to see that new one. I know it will be complete crap, but I'm excited to watch it anyway.
Yeah,
There's a
that's
part
called
2?
Dark Web, isn't it? Yeah, it's the Dark Web. Yeah.
Oh.
Gosh.
What horror films have you guys enjoyed?
Oh, lately, what did I see that I really liked? Oh gosh, I really want to see Hereditary. I've not seen that yet. What was the other horror film that came out around the same time at the cinema? Ooh, it's going to annoy me that. There's one that I really enjoyed. I enjoyed it so much I can't remember what it was called.
Was it the Billboards?
Oh no, 3 Billboards. Yeah, I liked 3 Billboards, but it wasn't a horror film.
The silence.
It's going to really annoy me.
The one with the silence.
Yes, that was good. A Quiet Place.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that. Have you seen anything, Leo, that's you've enjoyed?
That was a good one. And Hereditary, I have mixed feelings about, but like Toni Collette's acting, it's worth just watching for that. I was like, holy crap, She's an incredible actress. I don't know if they deserved her in it. What else? I'm really excited for the new Lars von Trier film. I may be the only one still excited for it. House That Jack Built. It's about serial killer.
Yeah.
I mean, he's kind of... I'm enjoying it from a kind of trashy perspective. That's like my Sex and the City equivalent, Lars von Trier film. It's like, yeah. So there's that. What have I seen that's scary?
Halloween is coming out soon.
Oh, the new, what's it called? That Insidious, The Last Key.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
that's really good. I love that one. Was good.
They've got The Nun coming out soon, haven't they?
I can't wait. Yeah, it looks cool.
Yeah, the new Halloween I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah.
I hope they do it justice and it's not just shit. Like the Rob Zombie one, it was just too redneck for me. You know, you have this story that's set in suburbia, and you know it's like a scary fairy tale in a way. You know, the original one, and then you have sort of Rob Zombie basically come along with a massive hammer and just basically destroy its legacy.
Yeah.
In two films.
Have you seen The Devil's Rejects?
I like that.
I love that film.
That's what the Halloween one felt like with Rob Zombie. Like he was shoehorning all his movies into the Halloween sort of universe.
Yeah.
Hey, someone just whispered.
Yeah, that was me other half asking me if I wanted a sandwich.
Oh my gosh.
That was so scary.
It was scary. Oh man.
Yeah. Welcome to professional podcast recording.
The sandwich.
Well, what kind of sandwich, Gary?
Well, I'm not having one, but she's having Primula cheese spread and ham.
Oh man.
Nice.
Yeah. Will wouldn't know what a barm cake is.
What's bomb cake?
Do you know what a barm cake is, Leo?
No idea.
Like a bread roll.
Okay.
But in England we have this thing. It's like whatever region you're from, and in Scotland I suppose, wherever region you're from, you have different names for the same things. And I'm sure it's the same in America, you know. But over here we have this thing where, you know, like a bread roll. You know, so I'd call it, when I was growing up, I call it a muffin. But you'd say a muffin's something sweet, wouldn't you? You know, like a cupcake muffin. Whereas Lisa, where she grew up, they call it a barm. Where, you know, I've heard cobs, bread rolls, baps. You know, there's all sorts of different names for the same thing. So, yeah. But she just said then, I'm having it on a barm. I said, yeah, but Will wouldn't know what a barm is.
So wait, a muffin on a barm?
No, a barm is a muffin. It's the same thing.
Oh, and then she's going to put...
It's a bread roll. It's a savoury bread roll, just like...
And then she's going to put the ham and the cheese in that.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Can I get one?
Yeah, well, I'll get to post you one over.
You send me that, and I'm going to send you my spaghetti sauce.
Yeah, big jar of spaghetti sauce. Jesus. Sorry, Leo. Sorry. This never happened on your podcast.
Sure.
But we just lost the plot, so...
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but see, I cut bits.
Yeah. Gosh.
Dear.
Anyway, I am going to have to go.
Anyway,
so it's been an hour and a half, so I think it's...
yeah, I got to go do the lawn and then the spaghetti, too.
Oh, yeah, you're going to have to send me some of that across. And you're going to have to send me off across, I don't know, an open sandwich or something, Leo. But thank you very, very much for coming on. We really appreciate you coming and talking with us. And you got really interesting insights, Leo, and it's been a pleasure to have you with us.
Oh, and to you guys. It was a real pleasure to be invited and to take part. Thank you so much.
No problem. And Will, you got to get on his podcast.
Oh,
you know you've made it when you get on his podcast.
Definitely.
For those listening who need to know, Jesus of Scumberg's coming out December. Pre-orders are up in October, am I right?
Yes.
I think that's right, yeah.
With Hindersouls Press. Read it. It's dark, it's gritty. Definitely give it a blast. Yeah. Thanks very much again, Leo, for coming on and talking about it.
Great. Okay. Bye for now, guys. Chat again soon.
Cheers. Take
All
care.
right.
See you later.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Later.
Bye.
I told you I'd shoot, but you didn't believe me. Why didn't you believe me?